Today I wanted to talk about the importance of doing single leg work. The bread and butter of every training program should be the big three: squat and bench and deadlift, but particularly we'll be talking about squat and deadlift because you're going to be able to load those the most. We all know why those are important in order to gain strength. However, the caveat to that is that when you're doing a bilateral movement such as a squat or a deadlift with both your legs working at the same time, it can sometimes mask any imbalances you have either in your core or your upper body or your lower body, any sort of imbalances or weaknesses or overcompensations on one side versus the other side. It can be masked pretty easily with a bilateral movement. And it becomes very apparent when you go and do a single leg movement such as a lunge, a single leg RDL, a step up, those types of variations. And oftentimes you'll find people who, we've had many examples of really strong guys who can, squat 400 or 500 pounds, and yet they kind of fall over with a 40-pound lunge. That's a problem. If there's that big of a difference between your ability to do a single leg movement and your bilateral movements, there's definitely some imbalances going on. So the reasons why we work on single leg work, 3 reasons. 1, it evens out those imbalances, so it finds them pretty quickly. And this is not just in the discrepancy between your right leg and your left leg, the strength, more so the ability of either your core to stabilize and prevent you from either rotating or rotating side to side this way. So it could be a core imbalance that's really the issue. It could be an imbalance down in your hips, so again, keeping you from moving side to side or twisting back and forth, or even just keeping your balance. If there's an imbalance between the two, or a lack of ability on one side versus the other side to stabilize in a particular position, that's gonna, overall, that actually is going to affect your bilateral movement. So by hammering out these imbalances and finding them and working on them and making them as even as possible by doing single leg work, it'll actually translate to your bilateral movements, that they will be a lot stronger because both sides are working at full capacity as opposed to one side overcompensating for the lack of strength in the other side. The second reason that we do single leg movement is kind of dovetailing from the imbalancing, is to work on the stabilizers. So the smaller guys who are not necessarily, again, they can be compensated for in a bilateral movement. So the small stabilizers of the hip, of the lower back, even of the ankle and foot. If you don't have those strong muscles, those muscles that stabilize the foot and the ankle are not strong, it will be very apparent in a single leg movement. Again, I've seen guys who are really strong, either in a squat or deadlift, but then just bugger out when it comes to single leg movement, and it's mostly because their stability on one leg is just piss poor. So that's one thing that we need to work on too, is just the stabilizers. Again, teaching them how to fire and getting them stronger. So stabilizers in the foot and the ankle and all the way up the chain into the hip and even into the core as well, learning how to stabilize when there's essentially an offset load. The third reason we do single leg movement is because most human movement is one-legged. Think about it: walking, running, not necessarily jumping from a vertical jump standpoint, but in sports, how often do you do a perfectly bilateral vertical jump or broad jump? More often or not, you're kind of taking off from one foot and then landing on the other foot, or maybe one foot at a time, or landing or cutting. There's lots of one-legged movements in everyday life, and especially in athletics. So if you're not strong in a one-legged stance, you're going to have issues when it comes to performing those activities outside of the gym setting. So again, we work on single leg movement to even out imbalances that may be hidden by bilateral movements. We work on the stabilizers who may not be working well or are compensated for in those bilateral movements. And both of those flow into producing better movement in just normal human life or athletics. So if you're not doing single leg work, again, it shouldn't be the bread and butter of your, again, the main bulk of your strength work should be those bilateral movements. Those are those are the rocks that you should be working on. But really, you need to supplement it with some single leg movements, either 2 to 3 times a week, at least one movement to help, again, work out those imbalances. So if you're not doing them, you really are missing out there.